Jefferson Wallace freezes as the flight attendant's voice echoes through the cabin. "Sir, we need to verify you're actually these children's father," whispers Spread. His twins clutch his hands tighter. The flight attendant smirks, unaware Jefferson's phone call will destroy her career in minutes. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button to join our community fighting against discrimination. Now, let's see how this flight attendant's career came crashing down. The alarm blared at 5:30 in the morning, but Jefferson Wallace had been awake for hours. Sleep rarely came easy these days. The 38-year-old architect sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his eyes before glancing at the framed photo of Naomi on his nightstand. 2 years since the car accident took her, and mornings still felt impossible without her gentle presence. "Daddy, are we going on the airplane today?" Zoe's excited voice echoed from down the hall, followed by the patter of small feet racing toward his bedroom. Jefferson forced a smile as his 8-year-old daughter bounded into the room, her brother Elijah trailing sleepily behind her. "Yes, sweetheart, we're flying to Atlanta today to see Grandma and Grandpa." This would be their first flight since Naomi died. Jefferson had avoided travel, finding security in the familiar routines of their Philadelphia home. But Naomi's parents needed to see the grandchildren, and Jefferson knew he couldn't put it off any longer. "Will the plane go super fast?" Elijah asked, climbing onto the bed. "Like faster than your car?" "Much faster," Jefferson assured him, pulling both children into a hug. "Now, who's ready for pancakes before we finish packing?" The kitchen became a flurry of activity as Jefferson prepared breakfast while mentally checking his packing list. Passports, birth certificates, medications, comfort toys, snacks, tablet devices charged with downloaded movies. The logistics of traveling alone with twins seemed overwhelming. "Daddy, can I bring sparkles?" Zoe held up her stuffed unicorn. "It's once white for now gray from constant handling." "Of course. Just remember you'll need to carry her yourself," Jefferson answered, flipping pancakes with one hand while checking flight details on his phone with the other. "Dad, what if the plane crashes?" Elijah asked suddenly. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Jefferson set down the spatula and knelt beside his son. "Buddy, flying is actually safer than riding in a car. The pilots are highly trained, and they have lots of instruments to keep everyone safe." "Mom was in a car," Elijah whispered, and Jefferson felt the familiar ache in his chest. "I know," he said softly, gathering his son close. "What happened to Mom was very rare and very sad, but we're going to be okay on this trip. I promise." As the twins finished breakfast, Jefferson's phone pinged with a text message. Dominic. His brother's name appeared on the screen for the first time in months. "Let me know when you land." Jefferson stared at the message, unsure how to respond. The brothers had barely spoken since Naomi's funeral, or more accurately, since Dominic had missed it, caught in Tokyo during a crucial airline merger negotiation. As the newly appointed CEO of Skylight Airlines, Dominic had chosen work over family once again, the final crack in their already strained relationship. A knock at the door interrupted Jefferson's thoughts. Cynthia from next door had offered to drive them to Philadelphia International Airport, saving them the hassle of parking. "Well, don't you three look ready for an adventure?" Cynthia exclaimed as she helped load their luggage into her minivan. "Thanks again for the ride," Jefferson said, securing the twins in their seats. "It's nothing. First flight without Naomi must be hard." Cynthia's voice softened. "She'd be proud of you, you know." Jefferson nodded, not trusting himself to speak. During the 40-minute drive, Jefferson's anxiety mounted. He'd chosen an early flight hoping for smaller crowds, but as they approached the sprawling terminal, he could see the departure level buzzing with activity. "Wow, so many people." Zoe pressed her face against the window. "Stay close to me once we're inside," Jefferson instructed as Cynthia pulled up to the curb. "Hold hands and don't wander off." The farewell with Cynthia was quick, and then Jefferson found himself shepherding two excited children and 3 suitcases into the bustling terminal. He immediately felt the familiar weight of eyes on him, sideways glances from other travelers. Subtle shifts as people created additional space around his family. "Dad, look at the big board with all the cities." Elijah pointed excitedly at the departure screen. "That's right, buddy," Jefferson replied, steering his son toward check-in, while keeping a firm grip on Zoe's hand. "Our flight to Atlanta is right on time." As they navigated through the terminal, Jefferson caught a woman clutching her purse tighter as they passed. An elderly man shook his head slightly when Elijah laughed too loudly at something Zoe said. The small indignities Jefferson had learned to anticipate in public spaces with his children. He checked his phone one last time before getting in line, his thumb hovering over Dominic's message. After a moment's hesitation, he typed, "We'll text when we land. Kids are excited." Then he pocketed his phone and focused on the day ahead, unaware of just how much he would need his estranged brother before this journey was through. The check-in line moved steadily forward, Zoe and Elijah entertaining themselves with a game of I Spy, while Jefferson reviewed their itinerary. When they finally reached the counter, he noticed the immediate change in the agent's expression, a subtle tightening around her eyes, the disappearance of the perfunctory smile she'd offered to the family ahead of them. "Good morning," Jefferson said pleasantly, sliding 3 passports across the counter. "Wallace family, flight 137 to Atlanta." The agent, her name tag reading Brenda, took the passports without returning his greeting. "These are your children?" she asked, eyes flicking between the documents and the twins. "Yes, they are," Jefferson confirmed, maintaining his composed demeanor despite the familiar sinking feeling in his stomach. "I'll need to see their birth certificates," Brenda stated flatly. Jefferson had anticipated this possibility. "Of course," he replied, retrieving the documents from his carry-on. He'd been through this routine before, the additional verification rarely requested of white parents traveling with their children. Brenda examined the birth certificates with exaggerated thoroughness, comparing them against the passports multiple times. "And where is their mother today?" she asked, her tone implying suspicion. Jefferson felt Zoe stiffen beside him. "My wife passed away 2 years ago," he answered quietly, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "I see," Brenda said, her expression unchanged. "And you have sole custody?" "Yes," Jefferson replied, the single word containing carefully controlled frustration. He produced the additional documentation he'd brought specifically for moments like this. After several more minutes of unnecessary scrutiny, Brenda finally processed their boarding passes, assigning seats deliberately separated from each other. Despite the flight showing plenty of open rows on her screen, "These seats are separated," Jefferson pointed out calmly. "We booked together, and I need to sit with my children." Brenda sighed as if greatly inconvenienced. "Let me see what I can do," she said, making a show of rearranging their seats before handing over the boarding passes. No apology, no acknowledgement of her error. "Thank you," Jefferson said, gathering their documents and guiding the twins towards security. "Daddy, why was that lady not nice?" Zoe whispered as they walked away. "Sometimes people are just having a bad day, sweetie," Jefferson answered, the practiced response bitter on his tongue. The security checkpoint presented its own challenges. While other families moved through the line with minimal fuss, a TSA agent pulled Jefferson aside for random additional screening. "Sir, step over here, please," the agent directed, motioning Jefferson toward a separate screening area. "My children," Jefferson began. "They can wait on the other side," the agent interrupted. Zoe's eyes widened with alarm. "Daddy," her voice trembled. "It's okay, sweetie," Jefferson assured her, though his heart raced at the thought of his children waiting alone. "I'll be right there. Just wait where I can see you." As Jefferson was subjected to an additional pat-down and bag search, Zoe began crying softly. Confused and frightened by the separation, Elijah stood protectively beside his sister, his small face serious as he watched his father being examined. A woman in a business suit noticed the twins' distress. She approached them, keeping a respectful distance. "Are you two okay?" she asked gently. "They're taking Daddy away." Zoe whispered tearfully. "He'll be right back," the woman assured her. "I'm Catherine. I'll wait with you until your dad comes back, okay?" Jefferson caught this interaction, gratitude mixing with humiliation as a stranger stepped in to comfort his children, while he was detained for no legitimate reason. Finally cleared, Jefferson rushed to the twins. "Thank you," he said to Catherine. "No problem," she replied, her expression communicating understanding. Traveling alone with kids is hard enough without. She left the sentence unfinished, but gave him a knowing look. As they gathered their belongings, Elijah tugged at Jefferson's sleeve. "Daddy, why was that man so mean to you?" The question hit Jefferson like a physical blow. These moments when he had to decide how much truth to share, how to prepare his children for a world that would judge them by their skin color, without crushing their spirits, were the hardest part of parenting. Without Naomi, sometimes people make assumptions about others based on how they look. Jefferson explained carefully, finding a quiet corner away from the flow of travelers. "It's not fair and it's not right, but it happens. Because we're black," Elijah asked, the directness of children cutting straight to the truth. Jefferson nodded slowly. "Sometimes. But that's their problem, not ours. We know who we are. And we hold our heads high, right?" Both children nodded. A conversation they'd had in various forms before. Jefferson hated that they needed to have it at all. They made their way to the gate area, finding seats where Jefferson could keep an eye on both children and their belongings. He checked his watch. Still 40 minutes until boarding. First-class passengers for Flight 1372 to Atlanta may now begin boarding, the gate agent announced. Jefferson had splurged on first-class tickets as a special treat for the children's first flight, hoping the additional space and attention would make the experience more comfortable. Now, as he gathered their carry-ons and moved toward the priority line, he felt the weight of stares from other passengers. A flight attendant standing at the entrance to the jet bridge, her name tag reading Chelsea Gordon, raised her eyebrows as Jefferson approached with the twins. "This is the first-class boarding line," she stated firmly, stepping slightly in front of the entrance. "Yes, I'm aware," Jefferson replied, presenting their boarding passes. "We're in seats 2A, B, and C." Chelsea examined their boarding passes with obvious skepticism before reluctantly stepping aside. "Very well," she said, the surprise in her voice making it clear she hadn't expected them to belong in first class. As they walked down the jet bridge, Zoe looked up at her father. "Daddy, why did she think we couldn't sit in the special seats?" Jefferson squeezed her hand. "She made a mistake, that's all. Now, who's excited to see what first class looks like?" Redirecting their attention worked momentarily, but Jefferson couldn't shake the familiar weight settling on his shoulders. The day had barely begun, and already he was exhausted from the constant need to navigate these waters, while shielding his children from the full impact of others' prejudice. The first-class cabin gleamed with soft lighting and spacious leather seats. As Jefferson guided the twins to their row, Zoe and Elijah's eyes widened at the luxurious surroundings, momentarily forgetting the uncomfortable encounter at the boarding gate. "These seats are huge," Elijah exclaimed, climbing into the window seat and immediately pressing his face against the glass to watch the ground crew. "Look, Daddy, the armrest has buttons." Zoe discovered the seat controls, her earlier distress giving way to childish wonder. Jefferson smiled, storing their carry-ons in the overhead compartment before settling between his children. He'd saved for months to afford these tickets, wanting their first flight since losing Naomi to be a positive experience. "Good morning, welcome aboard," a male flight attendant greeted them warmly, his name tag identifying him as Michael. "Can I get you or your children anything before takeoff?" "Apple juice for both of them, please," Jefferson replied, grateful for the normal interaction. "And just water for me, thank you." Michael nodded with a genuine smile. Coming right up. As other first-class passengers boarded, Jefferson noticed the stark contrast in their treatment. Chelsea, the flight attendant who had questioned them at the gate, offered warm welcomes and immediate assistance to white passengers while barely acknowledging his family's presence. A middle-aged white couple took the seats across the aisle. The man, who would later identify himself as Raymond Foster, surveyed Jefferson and the twins with obvious disapproval before leaning toward his wife. "Standards certainly aren't what they used to be," he muttered, just loud enough for Jefferson to hear. Jefferson pretended not to notice, instead helping Elijah buckle his seatbelt. He'd learned long ago to choose his battles carefully, especially with his children watching. Have you ever been in a situation where someone made you feel unwelcome in a space you had every right to be in? Type 1 in the comments if you've experienced this kind of prejudice yourself, and hit that like button if you admire Jefferson's restraint in protecting his children from these microaggressions. Subscribe to hear how this tense situation escalates. Michael returned promptly with their drinks, placing them carefully on each tray table. There you go. Let me know if you need anything else. Chelsea, meanwhile, moved through the cabin offering pre-flight beverages to other passengers, but repeatedly bypassed their row. After her third pass, Jefferson raised his hand politely. "Excuse me, my daughter would like some more apple juice, please." Chelsea glanced at him with barely concealed annoyance. "I'll get to you when I can," she replied curtly before turning to fuss over Raymond Foster's drink preferences. "Why doesn't she like us, Daddy?" Zoe whispered. "She's just busy." "Sweetheart," Jefferson answered, the familiar white lie settling heavily in his chest. 20 minutes passed before Chelsea finally returned with Zoe's juice, practically dropping it on the tray table as the aircraft experienced a small bump of turbulence. The plastic cup tipped, juice spilling across Zoe's dress. "Oh," Zoe gasped, as the cold liquid soaked through the fabric. Instead of offering assistance, Chelsea clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "You should be more careful," she admonished, looking pointedly at Jefferson. "Parents really should watch their children more closely." "She didn't spill it," Jefferson said quietly but firmly. "The turbulence knocked it over when you set it down." "Well, I can't help turbulence, can I?" Chelsea replied dismissively. "Try to keep things under control." She walked away without offering napkins or any help to clean up the mess. Jefferson took a deep breath, reminding himself that losing his temper would only make things worse. He pulled tissues from his bag and gently dabbed at Zoe's dress while she tried not to cry. "It's okay, sweetheart. We packed another outfit in your backpack, remember? You can change once we're in the air." From across the aisle, Catherine Chen, the same woman who had waited with the twins during Jefferson's security screening, offered additional napkins. "Here, these might help." "Thank you," Jefferson said gratefully. "I'm Catherine," she reminded him. "Looks like we're on the same flight. Jefferson Wallace." He introduced himself. "These are my children, Zoe and Elijah." "Nice to meet you all." Catherine smiled at the twins. "I fly this route every other week for work." "First time flying?" she asked them kindly. Elijah nodded. "Our first time since Mom went to heaven." An expression of sympathy crossed Catherine's face. "Well, you're doing great so far." Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by Chelsea's return. "Is there a problem here?" she asked sharply, looking between Jefferson and Catherine as if catching them in some improper exchange. "Not at all," Catherine replied coolly, "just helping with some spilled juice." "I hope these people aren't bothering you," Chelsea said to Catherine, not bothering to lower her voice. Catherine's eyebrows shot up. "These people," she repeated incredulously. Before the conversation could continue, the captain announced upcoming turbulence, instructing all passengers and crew to take their seats. Chelsea moved away without another word, leaving a tense atmosphere in her wake. Jefferson's phone buzzed with a text message. Glancing down, he saw Dominic's name on the screen. "How's the flight?" Using Skylight Airlines, Jefferson stared at the message, a complex mix of emotions stirring within him. His brother, CEO of this very airline, reaching out after months of silence. The irony wasn't lost on him as he glanced toward Chelsea, still unaware of who exactly she was mistreating. What would you do in Jefferson's position? Would you reveal your connection to the airline's CEO immediately, or would you wait to see if the discrimination continues? Comment 2 if you think he should call his brother right away, or 3 if you believe he should handle it himself. Like and subscribe to find out what Jefferson decides to do next. The seatbelt sign dinged off as the plane leveled out at cruising altitude. Zoe had changed into her spare outfit in the lavatory, with Jefferson waiting anxiously outside the door, worried about his daughter navigating the small space alone but unwilling to leave Elijah unattended in their seats. As they returned to their row, Chelsea approached with a stack of papers in hand. Her expression contained a determination that immediately put Jefferson on alert. "Sir," she said, loudly, drawing the attention of nearby passengers, "I need to verify that you're actually these children's father." The cabin grew quiet. Zoe clutched Jefferson's hand tighter while Elijah looked up in confusion. "Excuse me." Jefferson kept his voice level despite the anger flaring inside him. "It's airline policy," Chelsea continued, her voice carrying clearly, "throughout the first-class cabin, for safety reasons. We need to verify the relationship between adult men traveling with minors." Jefferson looked around pointedly. "Are you asking any other parents on this flight for verification?" Chelsea's lips thinned. "I need to see identification and birth certificates proving you're their father. It's for the children's protection." From their own father, Jefferson asked quietly, "Daddy?" Elijah's voice wavered. "What's happening?" "Nothing, buddy," Jefferson assured him, though his heart hammered in his chest. "Just a misunderstanding." Raymond Foster leaned forward from across the aisle. "The lady's just doing her job, making sure everything's proper. Security these days, you know." Jefferson ignored him, focusing on Chelsea. "I'd like to see this policy in writing, please, sir. If you continue being difficult, I'll have security meet the plane in Atlanta." Chelsea threatened, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We take child trafficking very seriously." The word trafficking sent a visible shock through the cabin. Whispers began circulating among passengers. Jefferson felt the familiar rush of heat to his face: anger, humiliation, and the crushing weight of fighting a system designed to view him with suspicion. "That won't be necessary," Catherine interjected from across the aisle. "This is clearly harassment." "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you." Chelsea dismissed her without a glance. "Actually, as an attorney who specializes in civil rights cases, I think it does," Catherine replied coolly. Chelsea faltered momentarily before doubling down. "We have procedures to follow." "Sir, the documentation, please." Jefferson saw Elijah's eyes filling with tears. "Are they going to take us away from you, Daddy?" he whispered. That broken question, the fear in his son's voice, nearly undid Jefferson completely. He had always taught his children that he would protect them, that they were safe with him. Now, in this enclosed space with nowhere to go, he was forced to choose between standing his ground and potentially traumatizing his children further, or complying with this humiliating, discriminatory demand. "Fine," he said finally, reaching for his carry-on bag. "I'll show you the documentation." Chelsea's expression shifted to one of smug satisfaction as Jefferson searched through his meticulously organized travel folder. Several passengers had their phones out now, recording the interaction. Jefferson found the birth certificates but paused before handing them over. A decision crystallized in his mind, a recognition that this moment wasn't just about him and his children, but about every parent who didn't have the resources or connections to fight back. "Before I show you these," he said calmly, "I need to make a quick call." Chelsea's eyebrows rose mockingly. "Calling your lawyer won't help. This is airline policy." Jefferson met her gaze steadily. "Not my lawyer. My brother." "Your brother?" Chelsea scoffed. "Unless he works for the FAA. I don't see how." "Dominic Wallace." Jefferson clarified, watching comprehension slowly dawn on Chelsea's face. "CEO of Skylight Airlines. Your boss." The blood drained from Chelsea's face so rapidly that Jefferson momentarily worried she might faint. Raymond Foster, who had been watching the exchange with undisguised interest, suddenly became intensely focused on his magazine. "I don't believe you," Chelsea stammered, though her confidence had clearly evaporated. "That's your prerogative," Jefferson replied, already dialing his brother's number. "But I suggest you check the company directory while we wait for him to answer." Jefferson stepped into the aisle, phone pressed to his ear while keeping his children in view. This wasn't how he'd planned to reconnect with Dominic after months of silence, but the situation had left him with few options. As the phone rang, memories flooded back. Dominic and Jefferson as children, walking home from school in their predominantly white neighborhood in suburban Maryland. 12-year-old Dominic stepping between Jefferson and a group of older boys who had cornered the younger brother, telling 8-year-old Jefferson to run home while he handled it. Dominic coming home later with a split lip but a satisfied expression, refusing to tell their parents what happened. They had always protected each other then, but as adults, their paths had diverged dramatically. Jefferson pursuing architecture, creating spaces where families could thrive, while Dominic climbed the corporate ladder with single-minded determination, business school, then management consulting, finally landing at Skylight Airlines where his tactical brilliance during a financial crisis had catapulted him to the CEO position at just 42. The brothers' relationship had grown increasingly strained as Dominic missed family gatherings for business emergencies, forgot birthdays, and postponed visits. The final breaking point came when Dominic missed Naomi's funeral, trapped in Tokyo. During crucial merger negotiations, his text message of condolence, "Sorry I couldn't make it, sending my thoughts," had felt like the ultimate betrayal to Jefferson in his darkest hour. "Jefferson?" Dominic's voice came through the phone, surprised and tentative. "Everything okay with the flight?" "Not exactly," Jefferson replied, keeping his voice steady. "I'm on Skylight Flight 1372 to Atlanta with the kids. We have a situation with one of your flight attendants." There was a brief pause before Dominic's tone shifted from brother to CEO. "What's happening?" Jefferson explained the situation concisely: the gate treatment, the ignored service requests, and finally, the demand for documentation proving he was his children's father. "The flight attendant's name?" Dominic asked, his voice now clipped and professional. "Chelsea Gordon. Flight number again, 1372, Philadelphia to Atlanta. We're about 30 minutes into the flight. Give me 2 minutes," Dominic said firmly. "And Jefferson, I'm sorry you're experiencing this." As Jefferson returned to his seat, he noticed Chelsea whispering urgently to another crew member, occasionally glancing in his direction. Several passengers were watching the unfolding drama with undisguised interest. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" Zoe asked in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart. Uncle Dominic is going to help sort things out," Jefferson assured her, though the words felt strange on his tongue. Dominic had barely been Uncle Dominic to the twins, his presence in their lives so sporadic they hardly knew him. Within minutes, the cabin phone rang. A flight attendant answered, then looked directly at Chelsea and motioned her forward. Chelsea's face paled further as she took the receiver, listening intently before responding with several yes, sir and no, sir responses. Moments later, the cockpit door opened and the captain emerged, scanning the cabin before walking directly to Jefferson's row. "Mr. Wallace?" he asked, his manner completely respectful. "I'm Captain Stevens. I want to personally apologize for any discomfort you and your children have experienced on our flight today." Raymond Foster's jaw literally dropped, his magazine sliding forgotten to the floor. "I've been informed of the situation," the captain continued, "and I want to assure you that what happened does not reflect our airline's values or policies. Ms. Gordon will no longer be serving in the cabin for the remainder of this flight." Jefferson nodded, uncomfortable with the special attention, but relieved the situation was being addressed. "Thank you, Captain. I appreciate your intervention." Chelsea returned from the phone, her complexion ashen. She approached Jefferson's row with visible reluctance. "Mr. Wallace," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I've just been informed of your connection to the company. I want to offer my sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Jefferson corrected her quietly. "It was discrimination. And it shouldn't matter who my brother is for my family to be treated with dignity." Chelsea stammered another apology before the captain interrupted. "Ms. Gordon, you're needed in the galley. Michael will be taking over service for this section." As Chelsea retreated, visibly shaken, Jefferson felt conflicted. The swift resolution provided immediate relief, but the knowledge that it came only because of his connection to power left a bitter taste. What about all the other passengers who didn't have a CEO on speed dial? Michael approached with a professional smile. "Mr. Wallace, we'd like to offer complimentary meals and beverages for your family. Is there anything specific you or your children would prefer? Just equal treatment?" Jefferson replied, "That's all we wanted from the beginning." The twins watched this exchange with confusion, too young to fully comprehend the dynamics at play, but old enough to sense the sudden power shift. Why is everyone being nice now? Elijah whispered to his father. Jefferson struggled to find the right words. Sometimes, buddy, people change their behavior when they realize they've made a mistake. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all he could offer in the moment, another in the endless series of partial explanations he'd been forced to give his children about the world they inhabited. With the immediate crisis resolved, Jefferson helped the twins settle in with their tablets, starting a movie they'd been eager to watch. Once they were absorbed in the colorful animation, earbuds in place, he finally took a deep breath, the first that felt complete since boarding the plane. Catherine leaned across the aisle. That was quite a resolution, she said quietly, though I have mixed feelings about how quickly it happened. Once your brother's name entered the equation. Jefferson nodded, the same thought weighing on his mind. Me too. I try not to use that connection. It feels wrong somehow. Mind if I join you for a few minutes? Catherine asked, indicating the empty seat beside him while the twins were occupied by the window. Jefferson nodded, and she moved across, keeping her voice low enough not to disturb the children. I didn't introduce myself properly earlier. Catherine Chen, civil rights attorney. I specialize in discrimination cases, including those involving transportation services. Jefferson Wallace, architect, specializing in surviving parenthood. He replied with a tired smile. You handled that situation remarkably well, Catherine observed. Many people would have lost their temper. Jefferson glanced at his children. Not really an option when they're watching. Besides, I've had plenty of practice. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Catherine's expression was knowing. Making that choice between standing up for yourself and protecting your kids from seeing how ugly the world can be. The understanding in her voice touched something deep in Jefferson. Most people offered empty platitudes or awkward sympathy, but Catherine spoke with the clarity of someone who recognized the impossible calculations he made daily. Exactly, he agreed. Every interaction becomes this complex equation. How much dignity am I willing to sacrifice to keep the peace? What lessons am I teaching my children by how I respond? Which battles are worth fighting? And all while processing your own hurt. Catherine added softly. Jefferson looked at his children. Lost in their movie, they've already lost their mother. I refuse to let them lose their sense of security or self-worth too. Have you experienced issues with this airline before? Catherine asked, her tone shifting slightly toward the professional. Not specifically, just the usual excessive ID checks, assumptions we're in the wrong line, seating errors that separate us. Jefferson shrugged. The background radiation of traveling while black. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. I ask because I've received multiple complaints about skylight in the past 6 months. Enough to suggest a pattern rather than isolated incidents. She reached into her bag and produced a business card. I'm not soliciting you as a client, but if you're interested in ensuring what happened today leads to real change, rather than just a what I'm fixed because of your connection, I'd be happy to talk more. Have you noticed how companies often address discrimination only when it affects someone with influence or becomes public? Type 4 in the comments if you believe systemic change requires more than individual solutions. Hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see how Jefferson uses his unexpected connection to create meaningful change at the airline. Jefferson accepted the card, turning it over in his fingers as he considered her words. I appreciate that. To be honest, I haven't spoken to my brother in months, not since he missed my wife's funeral. I'm sorry, Catherine said simply. It's complicated, Jefferson admitted. Dominic was always driven, always focused on getting ahead. I admired that about him until it became clear family would always come second to his ambitions. And now you're forced to rely on the very connection you've avoided using, Catherine observed. Jefferson nodded, glancing at his phone, making a decision. He typed out a message to Dominic. We need to talk about your airline's culture. The response came almost immediately. Already on it. This is unacceptable. Jefferson stared at the screen, surprised by his brother's quick and decisive response. Perhaps there was still something of the protective older brother beneath the corporate exterior, you know, Catherine said thoughtfully. Individual exceptions don't create systemic change. But someone in your brother's position could actually implement meaningful policies. The plane hit a small pocket of turbulence. causing Zoe to reach instinctively for Jefferson's hand even as she remained focused on her movie. The gesture reminded him how quickly children sense tension, how they absorb the emotional atmosphere around them even when adults think they're not paying attention. That's the thing about privilege. Jefferson said quietly, the real test isn't whether you enjoy its benefits, but what you do with it when you recognize you have it. Catherine smiled. Exactly. And from what I've seen in the last hour, you're someone who might actually use it for the right reasons. Jefferson looked again at his brother's text message, seeing in it not just a business response, but perhaps an opportunity to heal their relationship and, more importantly, to create the kind of change that might mean another father wouldn't face what he had today. I think it's time my brother and I had a long overdue conversation, Jefferson said, a new resolution forming in his mind. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our initial descent into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. The captain's announcement roused the twins from their movie. Jefferson helped them put away their tablets and secure their seatbelts. Noticing the dramatically different atmosphere in the cabin, Michael had been attentive without being obsequious, providing excellent service while maintaining a professional distance that felt respectful rather than fearful. Will Uncle Dominic meet us at the airport? Elijah asked unexpectedly. Jefferson hesitated. I'm not sure, buddy. Uncle Dominic is very busy with work, but he's the boss of the airplane. Right, Zoe persisted. That's what you told the mean lady. He's the boss of the whole airline, Jefferson corrected gently. But that means he has a lot of responsibilities. Before the children could ask more questions, Michael approached their row. Mr. Wallace, I wanted to let you know that Chelsea has been suspended pending a full investigation, he said quietly. I've worked with her for 3 years and never seen her behavior properly addressed despite numerous incidents. Thank you for bringing this to the company's attention. Jefferson nodded, uncomfortable with being thanked for something that had begun as simple self-preservation. I hope the outcome is fair for everyone involved. As Michael moved away, Raymond Foster cleared his throat from across the aisle. Excuse me, he said awkwardly. I feel I should apologize for my earlier comments. I had no idea you were connected to the airline. Jefferson studied the man's face, noting the careful calculation behind the apology. Would it have mattered if I wasn't? Foster shifted uncomfortably. Well, that is to say, my children deserve respect regardless of who their uncle is, Jefferson said firmly but without rancor, as does every passenger on this plane. Foster retreated into embarrassed silence as Catherine caught Jefferson's eye. With an approving nod, I'd like to stay in touch about this situation, she said, exchanging contact information with Jefferson. I think your perspective could be valuable in addressing the broader issues at play. The plane descended through clouds, the Atlanta skyline emerging through the windows. As they touched down with a gentle bump, Jefferson felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that the flight was over, apprehension about what might come next, and a strange sense of purpose that had been absent in his interactions with Dominic for years. When they were finally cleared to deplane, Jefferson noticed an unusual number of staff gathered in the jet bridge. A woman in a skylight management uniform approached immediately. Mr. Wallace, I'm Diana Patel, station manager. We'd like to personally escort you and your children through the terminal. Jefferson shook his head. Thank you, but that's not necessary. We can make our way like any other passengers. Diana looked uncertain. Sir, Mr. Wallace, your brother insisted that we provide assistance. I appreciate the thought, but we'll be fine on our own, Jefferson reiterated firmly. Please tell my brother we'll see him soon. As they emerged into the busy terminal, Jefferson noticed several people with cameras positioned near the gate area. Somehow, word had leaked about the incident involving the CEO's brother. Daddy, why are those people taking pictures? Zoe asked. They're just doing their jobs, Jefferson answered, positioning himself to shield the children as they hurried through the terminal. Halfway to baggage claim, Jefferson stopped short, standing near a coffee shop, seemingly engrossed in his phone, but clearly waiting, was Dominic. 2 years of distance hadn't changed him much, still impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, the same strong jawline that matched Jefferson's own. The though Dominic's close-cropped hair now showed touches of gray at the temples. What was different was the expression on his face as he looked up and saw them: uncertainty, even vulnerability, replacing his usual confident demeanor. "Jefferson," Dominic said simply, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Dominic," Jefferson replied. Equally reserved, the twins looked between the adults curiously before Elijah broke the tension. "Are you really the boss of the whole airplane company?" A smile softened Dominic's serious expression. "I am. You must be Elijah. And you're Zoe, right?" He knelt to their level. "I'm your Uncle Dominic. I'm sorry we haven't spent much time together." "You know our names?" Zoe seemed impressed. "Of course I do," Dominic said, a flash of sadness crossing his face. "I've missed too much, but I certainly know my niece and nephew." He stood, facing Jefferson again. "I'm sorry, Jeff, not just for today, but for everything. For not being there when Naomi," his voice caught. "We should get moving," Jefferson interrupted, not ready for this conversation in the middle of a crowded terminal. "Naomi's parents are waiting." "I know," Dominic nodded. "They agreed to let me meet you first. I'm coming with you to baggage claim, if that's okay." Jefferson raised an eyebrow. "You're taking time away from the office. Some things are more important," Dominic replied quietly. "It took me too long to realize that, but I'm trying to learn." As they walked together, the twins peppered Dominic with questions about airplanes, gradually warming to this uncle they barely remembered. Jefferson observed silently, noting how naturally Dominic interacted with the children despite his limited practice. "There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning," Dominic said when the children were momentarily distracted by an airport display. "I'd like you to attend." "Me? Why?" "Because what happened today isn't an isolated incident, and I need someone who'll tell me the unvarnished truth about my company's culture." Dominic's expression was serious. "I've been so focused on financial performance that I've missed something fundamental. I need your help to fix it." Before Jefferson could respond, they rounded a corner to find Naomi's parents waiting anxiously at baggage claim. Martha and Harold Baker rushed forward, enveloping the twins in tearful hugs while the brothers stood back. "You look tired, son," Harold said to Jefferson after embracing him. "Rough flight." "You could say that," Jefferson replied with significant understatement, as the twins excitedly recounted their airplane adventure to their grandparents carefully. Edited to exclude the confrontation, Dominic moved beside Jefferson. "I should have been there," he said quietly, "for the funeral, for you and the kids afterward." "There's no excuse." Jefferson studied his brother's face, seeing genuine regret. "No, there isn't," he agreed, "but maybe it's not too late to start doing better." Dominic nodded, a silent promise passing between them as they watched the children with their grandparents. A small family circle that had been broken by loss, but might yet find new ways to be whole. The Skylight Airlines headquarters dominated the Atlanta skyline, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that reflected Dominic's ambition and success. Jefferson felt distinctly out of place as he passed through the revolving doors the next morning, wearing his best suit but still feeling underdressed, compared to the executives striding purposefully through the lobby. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" The security guard's tone contained the familiar note of suspicion Jefferson had learned to anticipate. "Jefferson Wallace. I'm here for the board meeting with Dominic Wallace." The guard's expression shifted. Immediately, "Mr. Wallace's brother." "Of course, sir. Please sign in and I'll escort you to the executive floor." The preferential treatment still felt uncomfortable, but Jefferson reminded himself of his purpose today. This wasn't about leveraging privilege for personal benefit, but using it to create meaningful change. The elevator whisked them to the 50th floor, where another security checkpoint awaited. Several executives waiting nearby did double takes as Jefferson was escorted past them. Dominic's corner office offered panoramic views of the city, but what caught Jefferson's attention were the photographs displayed prominently on a credenza behind the desk. Among the expected corporate awards and handshakes with politicians were several family photos, their parents, holidays from childhood, and surprisingly, a recent school picture of the twins that Jefferson had sent months ago, unsure if Dominic had even received it. "You kept this," Jefferson observed, picking up a frame containing a faded photograph of the brothers as teenagers, arms slung around each other's shoulders. "Of course I did," Dominic said, entering the office and closing the door. "Despite everything, you're still my brother." He looked different today, still the polished executive in an expensive suit, but the carefully maintained facade had slipped, revealing the strain beneath. "I didn't sleep much last night," he admitted. "I've been reviewing passenger complaints, employee records, and diversity reports. What I found." He shook his head. "I should have seen it sooner. Sometimes we only see what we're looking for," Jefferson said without accusation. Dominic nodded. "The board is assembling in the conference room. Before we join them, I want you to know I'm grateful you're here. Not everyone would give me this chance after everything. This isn't about you and me," Jefferson clarified. "It's about making sure what happened to us doesn't happen to other families." The boardroom fell silent as the brothers entered together. 12 people sat around a massive table, 10 white men in their 60s, one younger white woman, and an Asian man approximately Dominic's age. The lack of diversity was immediately apparent and spoke volumes about the company's culture. "Gentlemen, Christine, James, this is my brother, Jefferson Wallace," Dominic introduced. "As you know, he and his children experienced discrimination on one of our flights yesterday. I've asked him to join us today to provide his perspective as we address this issue." Jefferson took the offered seat, aware of the evaluating glances directed his way. He recognized the calculations happening behind those stares, assessing his worth, his relevance, his right to be in this room of power. "We've also asked Chelsea Gordon to join us briefly," Dominic continued. "She should be outside now. Howard, would you please show her in?" The door opened to admit Chelsea, now dressed in civilian clothes rather than her uniform. She froze momentarily upon seeing Jefferson, then composed herself and took the seat indicated at the far end of the table. "Ms. Gordon, thank you for coming in today," Dominic began formally. "We're reviewing the events that occurred on Flight 1372 yesterday. Would you please explain your actions in your own words?" Chelsea straightened in her seat. "I was simply following policy regarding unaccompanied minors and potential trafficking situations. I had concerns about the children's welfare and acted accordingly." "Yet, you didn't ask any other parents on the flight for similar documentation," Jefferson observed quietly. "I didn't see any other situations that raised concerns." Chelsea replied defensively. "What specifically concerned you about my brother and his children?" Dominic asked, his tone neutral but intent. Chelsea hesitated. "It just didn't look right. Because they're black and I'm the CEO's brother," Dominic pressed. "I didn't know who he was related to," Chelsea protested. "And this is being blown completely out of proportion. I was doing my job." "Let's look at some data," Dominic suggested, nodding to his assistant, who distributed folders to everyone present. "In the past year, there have been 27 formal complaints filed against Ms. Gordon. 23 came from passengers of color. 5 specifically mentioned discriminatory treatment of families." Chelsea paled as murmurs circulated around the table. "Additionally," Dominic continued, "we have video footage from multiple passengers on yesterday's flight." "Howard, please play the compilation." The lights dimmed as a screen descended from the ceiling. The footage clearly showed Chelsea's differential treatment, ignoring Jefferson's requests, while attentively serving white passengers, her confrontational demand for documentation, and the dramatic shift in behavior after learning of Jefferson's connection to the CEO. When the lights came back up, Chelsea stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. A heavy-set man at the far end of the table cleared his throat. "While this behavior is certainly inappropriate, I think we need to be careful about overreacting. This appears to be an isolated incident. With respect, Richard." "It's not," Dominic interrupted. "Jefferson's experience highlights a systemic issue within our company." He tapped his tablet, and new data appeared on the screen, statistics showing Skylight's diversity metrics lagging significantly behind industry standards, complaint patterns revealing troubling trends, and employee survey results indicating widespread dissatisfaction among staff of color. "Our company has a problem," Dominic stated bluntly, "and it starts at the top." Jefferson watched his brother with growing respect as Dominic detailed a comprehensive plan for addressing the issue's revised hiring practices, mandatory training programs, new oversight mechanisms, and significantly, a passenger equity initiative to systematically track and address discrimination complaints. And I'm asking Jefferson to head this initiative as an outside consultant, Dominic announced, surprising even Jefferson with this detail. His background in architecture gives him unique insight into how spaces and systems affect human behavior, and his personal experience makes him ideally suited to help us see our blind spots. Several board members shifted uncomfortably, but before they could object, a new voice joined the conversation as Catherine Chen appeared on the large screen. Joining remotely, "Good morning," she greeted the room. "I'm Catherine Chen, civil rights attorney. Mr. Wallace, Dominic has asked me to provide context regarding the legal ramifications of systemic discrimination in transportation services. For the next 15 minutes, Catherine outlined the potential consequences of failing to address these issues, from lawsuits to regulatory scrutiny to devastating publicity. By the time she finished, even the most resistant board members appeared sobered. As for Ms. Gordon, Dominic concluded, turning to Chelsea, "Your employment with Skylight Airlines is terminated, effective immediately, while we take responsibility for the culture that enabled your behavior. We cannot retain employees who discriminate against our passengers." Chelsea's mouth opened in shock, "But HR will provide details regarding your separation package." Dominic continued firmly, "That will be all." As Chelsea was escorted out, Jefferson observed the dynamics around the table. Most board members seemed to have accepted the necessity of change, but one, Richard, who had spoken earlier, leaned forward with a scowl. "This feels like an overreaction to me," he stated flatly. "One incident blown out of proportion because it happened to involve the CEO's brother. We're running a business here, not a social justice organization." Jefferson met the man's gaze steadily. "With respect, sir, what you're calling social justice is actually good business. Every family that experiences what Minded represents, lost revenue, negative word of mouth, and potential legal liability. But more importantly, it represents human beings being denied their dignity while simply trying to use a service they paid for." "Well said," Dominic agreed, standing to signal the discussion was closed. "This isn't about politics or optics. It's about integrity, both personal and organizational. Now, let's move forward with implementing these changes." As the meeting adjourned, Jefferson noticed something he hadn't seen in years: Dominic standing tall, not just with the confidence of power, but with the certainty of purpose. For the first time since they were young, the brothers were united. Again, their different paths converging in an unexpected but meaningful way. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Jefferson found himself dividing time between his architectural practice, parenting the twins, and consulting on Skylight's passenger equity initiative. The work was challenging, but deeply satisfying, allowing him to apply his professional skills to a problem that had personal significance. Today, they were back at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, preparing for another flight to visit Naomi's parents. But this time, everything felt different. "Uncle Dominic," Zoe called out, spotting her uncle near the Skylight check-in counter. In the months since their reconnection, Dominic had become a regular presence in the twins' lives, making time for weekend visits and video calls despite his demanding schedule. "There's my favorite niece." Dominic grinned, scooping her up for a hug before high-fiving Elijah. Ready for another adventure, Jefferson observed the easy affection between his children and his brother, a relationship that had blossomed from almost nothing into something genuine and warm. It was one of many unexpected positive outcomes from that difficult day 6 months ago. As they moved through the terminal, Jefferson noticed the visible changes at the airline diverse staff. At every level, new signage highlighting the passenger Bill of Rights and QR codes for anonymous reporting of service concerns. Small changes, perhaps, but indicative of the larger transformation happening throughout the company. Several employees recognized Jefferson, nodding respectfully as they passed, not because he was the CEO's brother, but because he had become known as the one who changed things, near their gate. Jefferson was surprised to encounter Raymond Foster, the passenger who had supported Chelsea's discrimination during that fateful flight. "Mr. Wallace," Foster greeted him with obvious discomfort. I owe you an apology. A real one this time." He glanced at the twins, then back to Jefferson. "What I witnessed, what I supported on that flight was wrong. I've been doing some learning since then." Jefferson studied the man, sensing genuine remorse rather than the calculated self-preservation of their previous interaction. "Thank you for saying that, Mr. Foster. It takes courage to reconsider long-held views. Your brother's company has made impressive changes," Foster continued. "It's made me think about changes I need to make too." As they continued toward the gate, a news segment playing on an airport television caught Jefferson's attention. A reporter stood in front of Skylight headquarters, discussing the airline's new anti-discrimination policies that were setting industry standards. The camera cut to Catherine Chen, identified now as the head of Skylight's legal team for passenger advocacy. "The transportation industry has historically struggled with equitable treatment," Catherine was saying. "What makes Skylight's approach unique is that it addresses both individual incidents and systemic issues. We're seeing other airlines beginning to adopt similar frameworks." Dominic caught Jefferson watching the segment and smiled. "She's been instrumental in helping us get this right." The board was skeptical at first, but the data speaks for itself. Complaints down 60%, employee satisfaction up, and our customer loyalty metrics are the highest they've been in 5 years. And your architecture firm designing those new inclusive airport lounges was a stroke of genius. Dominic added, "The prototype in Chicago is already getting attention from other airports." Jefferson nodded, pleased but still processing the unexpected directions his life had taken. His architectural practice had expanded to include consulting on inclusive design for transportation hubs, work that blended his professional expertise with his newfound advocacy. Later that afternoon, the family gathered at a small chapel for a memorial service, marking the 2.5-year anniversary of Naomi's passing. For the first time, both brothers stood together with the twins and Naomi's parents, the family circle feeling more complete despite the permanent absence at its center. "She would be proud of you," Martha whispered to Jefferson as they placed flowers at the memorial, "not just for how you're raising the children, but for how you've turned your pain into purpose." She'd be surprised about Dominic, Jefferson admitted quietly. "I know I am," Martha smiled gently. "People can change when given the right motivation. Sometimes it takes a shock to the system." After the service, as they prepared to board their return flight to Philadelphia, Jefferson received an email notification. The scholarship fund he had established with what would have been his legal settlement, which he had declined in favor of systemic changes, had selected its first recipients. 5 minority students would receive support for education in aviation, hospitality, and transportation management. "Good news?" Dominic asked, noting Jefferson's expression. "The scholarship recipients have been chosen," Jefferson explained. Showing him the email, Dominic nodded approvingly. "Better than any settlement could have been. This creates lasting change." As they boarded the plane together, Jefferson, Dominic, and the twins, Jefferson noticed how different the experience felt. The flight attendant, a young woman named Aisha, greeted each passenger with the same warm professionalism, regardless of appearance or status. Once settled in their seats, Elijah looked thoughtfully at his father. "Daddy, remember when that lady was mean to us on the plane?" Jefferson tensed slightly, but nodded. "I do, buddy." "Is that why you and Uncle Dominic work together now? To stop people from being mean?" Jefferson exchanged glances with his brother, considering how to explain complex concepts of systemic change to an 8-year-old. "Partly," he said carefully. "We're trying to make sure everyone gets treated fairly, no matter what they look like or who they are. Like Mom always said," Zoe chimed in with the wisdom of children. "Be kind to everybody, even if they're different from you." Dominic's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "Your mom was very smart," he said, clearing his throat. "And I promise you both, I'm going to keep working to make her proud, just like your dad does every day." As the plane accelerated down the runway, Jefferson reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. What had begun as a humiliating incident had transformed into something unexpected. A healed family relationship, meaningful professional work, and most importantly, the knowledge that his children were witnessing how standing up to injustice could create ripples of positive change. It wasn't about privilege solving problems, he realized. It was about using whatever influence one had, whether small or significant, to create the world you wanted your children to inherit. And in that moment, as the plane lifted into the clouds with his family beside him, Jefferson felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time: hope for the future. They were building together. Jefferson's story teaches us that true change requires both individual courage and systemic action. While his connection to power provided immediate relief, the real victory came from using that privilege to create lasting transformation that would benefit everyone. This powerful narrative reminds us that discrimination doesn't just hurt its immediate victims, it damages entire systems, companies, and communities. When we witness injustice, we face a choice: remain silent for comfort or speak up for what's right. Jefferson showed that standing firm with dignity, even in humiliating circumstances, can be the catalyst for meaningful change. His journey demonstrates how seemingly isolated incidents of racism actually reflect deeper cultural problems that require structural solutions. Most importantly, the story illustrates how reconciliation and healing can emerge from painful experiences. When people commit to honest accountability, the brothers' reconnection wasn't just personal, it became the foundation for institutional transformation that benefited countless others. Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't just seeking personal justice, but creating a world where such injustice becomes increasingly rare for everyone. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination like Jefferson experienced? Would you speak up, record the incident, or mind your own business? Comment below with your thoughts on how we can all contribute to creating a more just world. Like this video if Jefferson's story moved you. Subscribe for more powerful stories of overcoming adversity, and share with someone who needs to hear this message of hope and accountability. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, change begins with each of us choosing courage over comfort.